Hi, welcome to Real Life. My name is Hayley, and today we're going to talk about that thing called a setback. Unfortunately, setbacks are just a natural part of anyone's growth process. You know, you have to learn to walk before you run. Nobody ever learned to walk without falling down. It's just sort of a natural thing that happens. But what do we do when we experience a setback in our journey from heartache to healing? Well, let me tell you about a setback that I had. We were visiting another church in the area because we had some really great friends that had come in from out of town to minister. And we'd had a great service. I had been having a blast in worship and seeing people that I hadn't seen for quite some time. And at the end, we were saying goodbye. We were telling our friends goodbye, and we were going to leave. And one of them said, "Hey, we have plenty of food in the back. Why don't you just come back here and you can eat with us? They're feeding the team." And okay, that sounds really nice, but I felt like a total interloper. And all of a sudden, I experienced like 500 hot flashes all at one time. I started sweating. I got nauseous. My mouth dried out. I felt like I wanted to fall into the floor. And it was like it was the first day of second grade for me. On the first day of second grade, I got on the bus. The entire bus was full because we were the last stop, and every seat was filled. Then I got to the school and I stepped off the bus and I was in the middle of this breezeway. And I know that my mom had taken me and we had figured out where the class was. I had met my teacher already, but for some reason I was completely lost. It was like everything just disappeared, and I was standing there and the world moved around me in slow motion. And I heard this voice whisper to me, "You're invisible." And that day, I believed a lie about myself that I was invisible. Okay, so fast forward, and I'm a grown woman with a husband and 3 children, and I'm standing there in this room of people that I don't know, and all of a sudden, I hear again, "You're invisible." And you know what should have happened is that I countered that lie with the truth and said, "No, I'm not invisible. I'm going to sit down and eat my dinner." But instead, I completely flipped out. I went inward, and I actually forced us to leave. I told Clint, I was like, we have to go right now. We have to go. And as soon as we left the parking lot, we saw a Sonic, and we pulled into that Sonic, and I drowned my sorrows in a cheeseburger, fries, cheddar peppers, and a large Dr. Pepper. That is how I dealt with my setback. And for about 2 weeks after that, I struggled with depression and anxiety. Well, you know, what happened was just natural. I experienced an external trigger that caused an emotional response in me. And instead of being ready for it, instead of being equipped to deal with it, I freaked out. And then I felt guilty for freaking out. So what do you do when something like that happens? Well, you just look that setback in the face and you acknowledge it, and then you move on, because that's all that you can do. There's no way to go back. There's no way to rewind. There's no way to relive and make better choices. You just acknowledge it and you say, "You know what? I had a total setback and I'm going to move forward." No shame. There's no shame in a setback. That's a lie. That is a total lie from the enemy, and I just refuse to believe it. So when you encounter a setback, when you are making progress in your heart journey, when you're making progress in your journey from heartache to healing, and you run into somebody, you run into someone who has hurt you, you run into an ex-spouse, you run into a situation that triggers an emotional response in you, and you drown your sorrows in a bucket of Ben and Jerry's, you just acknowledge it and you move on, and you refuse to allow shame to have a voice in your life. I think that's probably the most important part of dealing with a setback, is that you refuse to allow shame to speak to you about it, because there's nothing wrong with a setback. You experience it and you move on. So I bless you today to live your real life well, to experience setbacks, to acknowledge them, and you move on your road to healing, and you make progress. I can't wait to see you next time.